Hello, world. Starting in the events industry in 2015 and being promoted in just 6 months to become the UK's youngest event director at the ripe old age of 23, my next guest is on a quest as Netcore's first strategist on the ground in the UK and passionate about creative business development, new business acquisition, and strategy. Please welcome Paige Lewin, Head of UK Strategy at Netcore Cloud, to the show. Paige, are you ready to get radically transparent with me?
I am. I don't know if you're ready, but I'm ready, Jen, 100%.
Whoa. Now I'm a little nervous. Let me just say
As you should be. As you should be, Jen. It's going to be very, very honest next 20 to 30 minutes.
Well, that is what I expect. Listen, as I shared, you have quite an interesting backstory. And I know I only gave like a small little snippet. And I always like to start the first question with kind of a brief look at who you are and, what makes you go. But Paige, could you give us a brief look at your professional journey and how you actually found yourself at Netcore?
Sure, of course. So after university, I sort of went into my first office job, and it was in event sales, and it was sort of pitched as a graduate scheme, but I found out later it was far from. And in effect, what it was is I was sort of bottom of the food chain, making hundreds of dollars a week to try and get people to attend an event for free in their sector, right? So these are B2B trade fairs. So that was kind of my first experience of real hard work outside of working at Nando's. So it was a bit of a shock for me, but I loved it. I loved the challenge. And I thought, okay, this is my opportunity to really start building a career. So I kind of came in early, stayed late, did everything I should have done. And after about, I think, 2 months of heavy dialing, I got promoted into sales. Now, this was completely different because before, with the role that I was doing, there wasn't really much commission and the pressure was a little bit lower. Now, event sales is a completely different ballgame. And that's kind of where I started my career as a salesperson. And we were running and sort of selling space for these pretty big trade fairs across a range of industries. So healthcare, food, technology. And again, I sort of didn't really know what I was doing, Jen, I'll be honest, but you just kind of get your head down, you work hard, you take as much advice as you can internally, and you do the job. And I did that. It went well. And I think everybody was a little surprised, including me. And I think it was about maybe 3 to 4 months of selling on a really hard show, very niche, with one other person, and they promoted me again. And again, I'm thinking, I don't know that I should be taking these promotions, but I just ran with it because my mum actually has always said, you learn to do the job as you do it. So you say yes, even if you don't know whether you can. So I took that mantra and they gave me the first acquired event, because before they'd always made them from scratch, which was a huge deal, even more pressure. But as event director, the difference between the sales consultant role and the event director role is that gave me more visibility over all departments, all funnels, from operations to marketing to conference, and widened my ability to sell from just cold calling and dialing 50 to 100 people a day to being consultative, understanding industries, learning real problems and finding solutions. And then I realized, I actually quite like this. And it kind of dawned on me then that I think maybe it's strategy as opposed to just sales I liked. So did that for a good couple of years on the biggest European trade fair for independent living. It was huge and one of the oldest in the UK. So I think I must have been 23 at this point. It was a lot, but I loved it. But I decided after running this event for a few years that culture was a huge thing for me. And unfortunately, there was a very boiler room sales environment. And for somebody like myself, who takes their work home, who isn't particularly cutthroat, I really am not. I'm not built that way, wasn't raised that way. So I needed a different kind of environment that I could thrive in and become the consultative salesperson that I really felt that I was at my core. So I left and bounced around for a while. Honestly, I think there's a really bad stigma attached to not being at a job for a whole year. I don't know that that's the case anymore. I think we need to be a little bit more understanding that not every role you go into is going to be right, and not every opportunity is going to be pitched correctly to you either at the interview stage. So I did that, tried a bit of PR for a bit, went into SaaS a little bit, went back into events at different companies, and realized this is just before I found Netcore's role, that I wasn't getting fulfillment, and I just needed to find a role that, yes, had a sales element, because I do enjoy the process, but allowed me the freedom and flexibility to have a much more impactful role on my customer's life. And I couldn't do that. It was very much short sales cycle, sell to them, move them on. And that's not what I'm in it for. Mm-hmm. So I started doing some research on different types of sales, which I advise every salesperson to do, everybody to do, honestly, in every industry. When you leave a sector, do a bit of research about what other sectors exist in your ecosystem. And I even picked up the phone and called a couple of people to find out whether or not my past CV was going to be transferable. Looked at enterprise sales, high value sales roles in tech and SaaS, came across Netcore's role. And initially I wasn't going to apply. I looked at it and immediately thought, I've got about 7 years worth of event sales, great. But these people are going to want, 10 years worth of tech. And I don't have that. Yes, I've worked with clients from the tech space and loved it. And I did about a year in SaaS before, but that was about 4 years ago. And they're going to see that and say no. But again, mother said, you need to just do it. You just don't know. So the role itself kind of started as an enterprise sales role where you would be going after large accounts and looking after those large accounts, building them out over time. And after about 2 to 3 interviews, the role changed completely, where now it's more a case of being a territory manager and head of strategy for the whole of the UK. And it was likely, yes, my skill set, but my passion. And my passion to have something I can call my own, something I can create from scratch. Sounds crazy, but I do quite like putting out fires. I really do. I don't know if it's because I was sort of born in the flame and forged in the flame of sales, but it means that I've come up and enjoyed having an element of how do we fix and seeing the benefit of what you've created and solved. So they gave me full autonomy, full flexibility to make the role what I wanted it to be. And now, 5-6 months on, we've got to a stage where head of UK strategy made the most sense. I'm absolutely loving it.
Well, let me say, that's an incredible story. And thank you for being so open about that story. You've mentioned Netcore a few times, and any company that allows and gives the opportunity to their team members to kind of create and craft a role that really fits their passion sounds like a great place to be working. Could you, like, one sentence or a quick elevator pitch? You have a sales background. Could you?
I'm ready.
Right? Could you give us what's the value that Netcore is bringing to your customers? What is Netcore?
Okay. So if we were to just do it on a granular level, Netcore is intelligent multi-marketing stack, right?
Right.
On a personal level, we are one of the most person-centered SaaS companies you'll find. And when I say person-centered, I hate myself for it because people use that word all the time and it doesn't really mean anything anymore. But when I say that, I say my clients have my mobile number and there is no cap on when they decide to call or when I allow them to call. It could be deep into the evening, early hours of the morning, because my main goal here is to create and build community, and Netcore have that same ethos. How can we help solve is one, but how can we support you and help you? And sometimes that means I'm going to have to hold your hand and I'm going to have to potentially sit down and spend 3 hours creating a deck that's personalized for you, because a standardized deck's not going to really be relevant. And it's taking that extra mile for every customer, not just the one spending 20K. I mean, for everybody. That's what I think sets Netcore apart and where we have alignment, as me as a salesperson and them as a business, where I feel like it's a perfect match.
So listen, you've got a lot on your plate. And right, you're like, you're on the UK floor, on the ground, boots on the ground, building pretty much something from nothing at the moment.
Yes.
What is keeping you up at night professionally?
Oh God. Jen. So what is keeping me up at night is I'm now in my dream job. And what that in effect means is I have full freedom to go forth and create. And I'm looking forward at the next sort of 6 to 12 months. I'm looking at recruitment. I'm looking at growing out teams and how we do that and what we do in order to succeed. And I keep having these traumatic flashbacks of every sales house I've been. And I don't want, no, it's not a don't want, I will not create that same toxic environment that I was in. So what is currently keeping me up at night is, okay, cool. It's all well and good, sort of casting an element of judgment, I suppose, on where you've been. But can you do better? Now you're in a position where you have the power to create the environment you wished you grew up in the sales world. Can it be done? And if you create that environment, is it going to be able to yield profitable results? Because what you want, in effect, is somewhere where your sales team feel nurtured, valued, their mental health and well-being is taken into account. They have more than just a carrot of a really overly shot target or a stick of potentially being fired to drive them. They've got internal drive because they love their job and they love working with their team and they love coming to work. So it's that fear and that hope that, okay, we have a picture of what we want to build as a new wave sales environment. Can we make that functional so that we can use that as a framework to say to other sales houses, yeah, you don't have to do this anymore, guys. It can work and we can make the same profits or ideally more as a result of making these salespeople feel like more than just a number.
That's loaded with so many thoughts, so many questions. You know, I think it's really admirable, right? When you step into leadership shoes, we've had a lot of guests on our show talk about that transition, right? Once you do hold the power, once you are in that executive leadership role, or, you know, you go from entrepreneur to CEO or CMO, right? Like, how do you balance this? How do you build this? So what would you say right now would be the biggest challenge for you in building out these effective processes that also play nicely with a strong, authentic, but empowering company culture?
Okay. So what I've learned is the main hurdle to really making an effective business process, workflow, creating an environment where teams collaborate in the most productive way is usually fear of change. Every single time I've gone into a new business, right, those within the business have been running their department or managing themselves, whether rightly or wrongly, for X amount of time in a particular way. And it is incredibly difficult to change them because oftentimes, being completely fair, they're generating revenue. If they're in marketing, they're getting good engagement. They are. They're not harming the business. Otherwise, I'm sure the business would find a way to make a difference or a change. So it's a case of going into a company and saying we could do better, whether it's looking at the actual workforce, how we could support them in a better way and have them then work to either higher potentials or produce better work as a result, or whether we look at what the process is. Do we think that sales and marketing working in silos, is that the most effective way? Do we need to pull those two entities internally together? But then you have to then go to the CMO, and then you have to go to the sales director. And even if they're on board, you'll usually have these old dogs in both departments. Are they going to follow suit? Usually no. And they don't get forced to by the top because they're doing their metrics. So this is one of the things that I've realized, is that when it comes to businesses really thinking long-term, having vision and making a very concrete decision that, no, we want to make a change, we want to do better, then they need to learn to have patience, long-term vision, clarity on goals across the board with everyone involved. You can't leave out the executive or even the intern because they play a part. So communicating all the way down the hierarchy so everyone not only feels respected, but knows what role they need to play collectively to get to that goal. And we need to understand that there's probably going to be a dip. I know, horrifying. There may be a dip in sales. You may not get the same engagement on your emails, but it's okay. That's a learning curve and it will pass. and having the patience to be able to outweigh that learning curve and take it for what it is, it means that in 3 months, 6 months, even a year's time, you're potentially going to be making 50% more sales than you were before, and that will eradicate the 20% dip you had in the learning curve period. And that's one thing that I just feel is one of the most important things for businesses and myself to take into account.
Absolutely. And I agree with you, right? It's all about mindset. We often, at Oktopost, a lot of times we have conversations about what are the elements of a transformation, right? Mindset,
Right.
skill set, tool set,
Mm-hmm.
one of those. And especially, right, it starts with mindset. But if one of those elements are missing, you're not going to be able to transform,
No.
you're not going to be able to change. So I'm right there with you. In your opinion, right? Because you mentioned, getting the CMO involved and the head of sales,
Yes.
and everybody needs to be on the same
Page.
right?
Yep.
So in your opinion, what would you identify as the ideal relationship between, for example, a CRO, a CMO, and a CEO?
Sure. Okay, love this question. So these three roles form, in effect, the three pillars of an incredibly profitable and powerful business foundation. And in order to create the kind of working environment that generates not just high profits, but high functioning teams and a positive internal workflow, what you need is for those relationships to not just run alongside one another, they need to intertwine. And if each of these C-suites work in silos, their teams will follow suit. And they too will work in a similar way, where there is very minimal collaboration or integration of process, ideas, or campaigns, for example, they will not be joined together. And this comes down to having more joint meetings, whereby sales and marketing are able to benefit from understanding each other's day-to-day responsibilities, and also realize the part that they play in the success of each other's KPIs, because sales and marketing is one sales function, it's one marketing function, is one process. They're just at different stages. And what I do realize is it stems from the top, because the culture is bled down. So what you need to be doing is, even down to comments made about the marketing team from a salesperson to a sales director or a CRO, that needs to be nipped in the bud. The whole culture needs to be an inclusive culture starting from the top, and it needs to be maintained. And once we've gotten the respect across all teams, what we need to understand is that more education from the CRO, from the CMO, and from the CEO about what each department does, their function and their importance to the business and to the opposing department's success, that's where they're going to find strength. And I just also think that, looking at roles that I've done, companies I've been in, it is not an us and them. This needs to stop. We are going to be, so the CRO is going to be the team, and his whole department is going to be the team that helps the CMO's department hit their metrics. And the sales team are only going to hit their sales targets if the leads generated from the marketing team are good quality. They need one another. And I think that understanding needs to be communicated. And I think we need to be able to understand moving forward that we are all, in effect, one function running at different stages.
So I agree with you, right? I mean, I think that's a very strong statement. And I think it definitely needs to happen and can be done better in every organization.
Yeah.
Where I'm curious to understand a little bit is kind of what you said, right? So in some capacity, right, a salesperson was hired to hit numbers, a marketing person was hired, to get leads, and you have all the teams in between and up and down.
Yeah.
What have you seen in your experience working well? Is it a monthly meeting, like all hands on with everybody together? Is it like a fireside chats with like listening into the executive team? What have you seen work well to like bridge these teams when everybody
these gaps,
has like their day job?
So I've had a very, very positive experience. And it was when I was an event director. And in the company I was in, it was very segregated, massively. So salespeople almost put on a pedestal as being these otherworldly beings. and the marketing were just very hardworking and a little bit overlooked. And as soon as I had questions about where these leads were coming from, before I just picked up the phone and called, I thought, I don't understand why I wouldn't just go and speak to the marketing director that generated them. It felt very foreign because that was not the culture. You would not just pop over and speak to the marketing person. You pick up that phone and you call them immediately and you find out from them. That was the culture. So I just thought, okay, I'm going to go and sit down and just have a one-to-one. The marketing director at this company was incredible. And they opened my eyes to almost how blind I was as a salesperson, not having this kind of interaction. I learned not only what platform that lead came in on, I learned the campaign they engaged with. We had technology at the time that could tell us what pages they looked at on the website. And I'm thinking to myself, how on earth was I planning to close this deal without this information? I'm sure I could have sort of stumbled through over the course of weeks, over the course of about 20 touch points, chases, cold calls, emails, but I don't need it, because what I actually need is to learn what their problem is from the person who's been able to find it before I even put my hands on this lead. And from that, I realized, okay, what we need is more fluid engagement, just dynamically throughout the day. That's the first thing. You have a question, go straight over to marketing. Ask them, learn about your customers, learn about the industry. I'm not saying with everything a salesperson has to do, especially if they have to canvas their own leads, which we had to do in the evenings, and cold calling and then handling lapse data, I already know that it takes a lot of time. So I'm not necessarily saying to you, spend 2 to 3 hours learning about your entire ecosystem. There's people over there that's already done it. Go and get a little roundup, get a little 10 minutes and find out a little bit more context on your sector, what you're selling, who you're selling to. So when you pick up that phone, it is not a boiler room, try and close in a day mentality. It's I've realized this. How can I help? Because the industry is this, and other clients have struggled with these problems. And I think we might be able to do something for you, but I need to understand on a deeper level. The second thing is sales and marketing meetings do need to be combined. And when I say this, I can't give a time frame on weekly, monthly, because it's very dependent on each business and what that meeting is about. But if there is a meeting that is held by the CMO for the whole marketing team, talking about a certain target demographic and talking about personas and how that persona engages with certain content and certain triggers that will have them open emails as opposed to others, get the salespeople in that meeting, get them in there so they can understand how their target market is going to interact, not just with the marketing contact, but with their pitch, with the collateral they send afterwards. And in the same vein, if the sales team are having a meeting about their pipeline, and this would happen depending on the business daily, in the morning, definitely point of contacts from marketing should be in there, because some of those leads are inbound from marketing. So we need to understand if they're not being closed, why? And if you're struggling and there's a disconnect and you're having X amount of prospects falling out the funnel, salesperson, well, let me send you this, or maybe we could tag team a call, or maybe I could give you a little bit more insight to some of the other people that are in their sector and how they've been engaging with our content and help you close this deal so my metrics don't drop and your metrics and commission doesn't drop. And that is all we need to do. We don't need to do an up-call where everybody's sat next to one another in one room. I'm just saying that it's going to benefit both sides if we look to connect the dots where it makes sense to.
Agreed. Listen, it's definitely, I think, top of mind for many leaders. It's much easier said than done.
Yeah.
But very doable.
Yes.
How are you holding yourself accountable as a leader right now?
As a leader, there has never been a point, inclusive of right now, where I feel I have learned enough to warrant always being right. And I'm sure a lot of people would naturally think, with the personality I have, that that is not the case. But no, I honestly am ready to be told I'm wrong. And I'm ready to be told I'm wrong from people that are hired by me. Because being humble is realizing that a large part of being a leader, hiring, managing, training people, is understanding that there are countless incredible people who have basically got more knowledge about certain elements of your business than you do. which is why you hired them, because they have this incredible insight into digital, into social, into customer insights that you don't have time to really be putting out there on a day-to-day basis because you're dealing with big picture stuff, right? Give these people the respect they deserve so that they feel that the talents that brought them to the interview and got them that job are taken seriously by senior leadership. And that also means that I'm listening to your ideas. I'm asking you questions. It also doesn't mean that I'm going to say yes to everything. I'm going to play devil's advocate because I take you serious and I want us to flesh out an idea that works. And then on the flip side, when I'm putting an idea on the table, be prepared for them to pick it apart with valid reasons coming from a constructive place with solutions that back it. So together, we can make a solution. So it's not a team I run, it's a team I work with. And that is one of the most important things, so that you don't become a manager, you are a leader, and the two are very different. And a lot of sales houses I've worked in do not understand the difference.
Well, hopefully those that don't understand the difference, the first step is listening to this podcast. So I hope
hopefully I'll be sending links around. Don't worry, Jen.
So with that being said, I have two more questions for you.
Sure.
One is about, right, like hindsight is 2020. Yeah. And again, hearing your journey, and I too, started off in sales before, heading into the dark side of marketing, if you will. So a lot of what you're saying definitely resonates with what I've known and learned and what I've seen.
Yes.
What is one thing, as you entered this role where you are today, what's one thing you wish you knew when you started that you think would have greatly helped you on your journey that you didn't know then, but you know now?
Okay, so moving into this particular role, I genuinely was a little anxious. I think I made reference to the fact that not spending 7 years in SaaS, spending 7 years in events, and then moving into a leadership role in SaaS, it's kind of wild in theory. Like on paper, a lot of people would be like, okay, if you want to. But I've just come to the conclusion over the last 5 months, selling tech is less about selling tech and more about people. And it sounds daft because we all say people sell to people, people buy from people. Yes, but sometimes it takes a little bit more than that. There's a level of knowledge required, and I get that. And I have realized that really achieving success in this role is more around my personal experience with people, how to connect with the problems that they have. And in particular, being a consumer has really helped me. So one tip I would give to anybody looking to move into a new role is look at who they target. Because if you are a direct consumer of those people, my God, the pitch is very easy because you are the person that you're helping them to engage with. So I've had a number of meetings with these huge retailers. I spend so much money with these people. I am on their website frequently. So when I'm talking to them, I only have to have a top level understanding of the technology. I understand case studies because I know it would make me spend more money. And this has honestly been the thing I've realized that has made my meetings incredibly successful, because I'm talking to them from a perspective of someone that's telling them, I will give you my full salary if I could have access to this kind of personalization on the website, if I could have a more tailored experience from the beginning, if you could send me an email that was personalized just to me and not just to a load of people that search the same things as me. And that's invaluable. Yeah. So having that understanding of what they need, the problems that they have, sure, that's a standard static sales tactic that we all need to really take seriously. Fix a problem, don't sell a product. The product is the catalyst for the solution. However, when you are working in an industry where you spend your money with these people, tell them, make it clear, and they will understand that not only are you invested in their project on a very personal level, but you also are able to understand exactly what they're trying to achieve. And that's the biggest highlight for me.
I love that advice. I think it's spot on. And as you're telling that story, I could absolutely relate, right? Like it makes sense. But right, we only learn that, you
learn it afterwards.
On the journey,
after the anxiety has set in, you learn it after, which is unfortunate, but that's life.
Exactly. So listen, you have been extremely radically transparent. And I really thank you for opening up about so many different challenges, between sales and marketing and enablement and really the challenge behind creating an incredibly epic company culture.
Yeah.
I want to ask now, it's my favorite question. And, we're going to joke about, right? Hey, it's all about people to people. But at the end of the day, it kind of really is, right? All about the personal connection. So I did my due diligence. I have looked up and down your LinkedIn profile. I have learned a lot about you based solely on LinkedIn. Could you tell us one thing about yourself that we actually can't learn from your LinkedIn profile?
Let me think. Don't need to be too radically transparent across the board, do we, Jen?
Right, because it's not on LinkedIn. It's probably not there for a reason.
Okay, I tell you what, something that every single person in my job that I've either worked with or worked alongside has mentioned is that I am very sensitive. And from my voice to my demeanor, it does not come across. Even on my LinkedIn, it's very intimidating. Not the case. So one of the things I've thought in my life is I like to help people. Like, I really, really do. But so it happens I'm not out building churches in Africa, and I hate myself for it every day, Jen. But this weirdly is giving me a gateway to fulfill that need. And what I mean is, an example, there was somebody I worked with very early on in my sales career, and we spoke for hours and hours and hours. They didn't have a huge amount of investment, but we got down to the crux of it, and he just wanted to be able to spend more time with his kids. And I just thought, oh, God, my heart. And we were talking about how we could get him to the show, and he didn't have like the full rate card. I bent over backwards to not only get him the discount that he needed, but it was more than that. A discount doesn't mean you're going to be successful on site. Everybody knows that. It just means that your bank account's going to look a little bit healthier. You need support leading up to it and after it to convert those leads. So he got my mobile number. We were talking in the evenings. I was making strategy. It was almost like we worked in the startup together. And it was draining. Honestly, it was draining and exhausting. But when you get a photo 3 months later of a man with his kids, and he said he was able to hire someone that could fill in for him so that he could spend more time with them, I think we're in France. Did I cry? Maybe.
Hey, you're going to make me cry.
Honest to God, that is what you will not see on my LinkedIn. You will see high-flying salesperson, UK head of strategy, and that's fine. You want your clients to feel comfortable that you know what you're doing, great, but take this seriously. And even though I'm not doing everything that I'd like to be doing, to sort of, I guess, make the world a better place, strangely enough, as much as salespeople get a bad rap, this is my way. And it makes me able to sleep at night when those other things are keeping me up. How about that?
Paige, we come full circle.
Come full circle.
We've come full circle. So listen, you are inspirational. And I know that there are a lot of professionals who are going to want to be in touch with you, learn more, have radically transparent discourse about what we spoke about. Where is the best place if people want to learn more about Netcore, if people want to talk strategy? Where's the best place to connect with you?
LinkedIn, funnily enough. Now you've got all the background on me. Connect with me on LinkedIn. Send me a message. I think my number's on there as well. My email's on there. So if anybody wants to speak about anything on or off topic, just let me know. I'm an open book.
Fantastic. Paige, thank you so much.
No problem at all. This has been fantastic. Thank you, Jen.
Thanks for tuning in to the Radically Transparent podcast brought to you by Oktopost, the only social media management and employee advocacy platform architected for B2B. I'm Jennifer Gutman, your host and director of social strategy here at Oktopost. And if you love today's show, we'd love if you subscribe, rate, and give a raving review wherever you get your podcasts. For more discussion on B2B social media marketing, be sure to follow Oktopost on LinkedIn. And of course, to gain access to all our free social media marketing and employee advocacy resources, head on over to our website, www.oktopost.com. Until next time.